Today we are going to be making these incredible hazelnut fondant caramel loaded chocolate chip cookies made with brown butter. They are delicious and decadent and so much fun to make. Alright, the first thing we need to do for our cookie dough is brown the butter. So you have 200 grams of butter here. You need 180 grams of butter total. And you're just going to melt it over a reasonably high heat. You can chop it up if you want. I always use salted butter, especially for this. It just makes it taste better. If you don't have unsalted butter, add a good pinch of salt to this. I would add it at the beginning so the salt can kind of infuse into the brownness of the butter. And what we're going to do is we're actually going to take our brown butter really far and make it very dark on the edge of burnt. Normally in recipes they say cook to a light nutty brown, and for kind of savory cooking, if you're using it, you know, a lot of people use it with like fish or something like that, you just want that light, slightly nutty flavor. But we're going to be adding chocolate to this, we're going to be adding flour, 2 types of sugar, vanilla. We're adding all these flavors in that it needs to kind of stand out on, so you really need to make it quite dark to help that happen. So once it's all melted, you want to be whisking it constantly to scrape the base, otherwise it kind of doesn't really burn on the bottom of your pot, but it does stick to the bottom of the pot, even if you have a non-stick pot. So just whisk it, and it can take a while. Just whisk it constantly, be careful because it will bubble up as well. So it's just been a few minutes of cooking and you can see my butter is just starting to lightly brown. But like I said before, we want it to go a bit darker than this, and it won't take very long. But now that's the color I'm looking for, so it's a deep brown. Sorry, turn that off. Yeah, that's the color you want. So this takes a while to cool down. It's very, very hot, so please be careful. Just going to pour it into a bowl to cool down a bit while I weigh everything else up. Make sure you get all, there'll be like a bit of stuff, I guess, kind of like if you let it settle, you get kind of, it separates out. Basically the thing that we're browning in the brown butter is the milk solids, and those separate out and kind of goes like a almost black powder at the bottom. You want those because that's where all the flavor is. So I'm just going to let this cool down. Like I said, it's very, very hot, so please be careful. Just leave it somewhere to cool. If you're going to put it in your fridge to cool down faster, give it some time, otherwise it's quite hot on the plastic shelving of your fridge. So yeah, I'm just going to leave it like that while I kind of weigh everything else out and get ready. Normally about half an hour. Sometimes I put the sugar in to make it cool down faster. But yeah, it's up to you. You can also do this a few days in advance and have it in the fridge, or just leave it at room temperature. Alright, we'll see you soon. Okay, my butter has cooled down now, so I'm going to, still a little warm, but it's not like hot. Yeah, it's about room temperature. Going to add in my sugars, brown sugar and white sugar. Give that a good whisk. 2 eggs. Whisk that all together till it's nice and combined. Then we're going to add in our flour, baking powder, baking soda, and corn flour. You don't need to sift it. Another one of my life missions as a baker is to stop people from sieving things because you are wasting your time. Sorry, that was very aggressive, wasn't it? So I'm just kind of folding this in. You can stir it, but I just like to fold things. It's quite fun. The reason that we started sieving flour was because we didn't have the kind of technology or refinement systems to get all the little bit of stones and stuff out of it. Now we do. So you're never going to get a stone in your bag of flour. If you do, you need to send that back. People say it aerates your flour or combines the baking powder and baking soda. If you're worried, just give it a little whisk to combine it. But I have never, ever worked in a professional bakery where we sieve flour, unless you're sieving it into like a genoise sponge, something very light. And in that case, someone is folding while the other person sieves it in. Even if you sieve it, stop, mix, sieve it, stop, mix, the air is compressing, the flour is compressing on itself, so you're not actually getting any more aeration into it. So basically, don't bother. So your mix should be nice and combined. Add in your chocolate chips. These are Calabo chocolate chips, so they're still couverture chocolate, which means they'll go all melty and delicious. If you use like baking chocolate, it's not going to melt as much, but it's up to you. Whatever you want to use for this is fine. You can just chop up chocolate. The reason I use these little buttons is because it means your cookies stay more round. With the chopped chocolate, they can kind of spread in different ways. Yeah, so we're going to rest this. I try and rest it for at least 2 hours until it's nice and firm. You can stick it in the freezer to fasten the process, make the process faster. There we go. All right, in the fridge we go. It is time to make our caramel for the top of our cookies. In my pot, I just have some sugar. I'm going to make a little indent in the center. I have made this caramel already today, so my pot is a little bit burned for reasons that I'm sure you may guess. So yeah, pot's not dirty, just a little bit burnt, because I know you're all going to be like, oh my gosh, that pot is so gross. Anyway, make a little indent, and I have my heat on a medium-high heat, and you can see the sugar is starting to liquefy. Once that happens, you can start to stir your sugar. If you feel like it's already browning too quickly, you can turn it down a little bit. You don't have to be scared about stirring the sugar for a dry caramel. It has no water in it, which means that it's not going to crystallize. Keep stirring constantly. The spatula I'm using is a silicone spatula, just a cheap one, not a fancy one. But if you are going to use something that's not like a wooden spoon, you make sure it's silicone, otherwise the caramel will melt it. I have done that many times before. Just keep stirring, and I'm going to turn my temperature down a bit because we're getting to a nice caramel color, and I just want to keep mixing until all these lumps have melted out. If I get to a point where my caramel I feel is the right color but I still have some lumps, I'm just going to add the cream in anyway. The lumps you can fish out later. It's not worth burning your sugar for. Alright, so we're a nice light golden color. All my lumps are gone. I'm going to turn that off. Add in the cream and let it bubble up. Don't stir it until it starts to calm down again. You can see it went up and now it's going down. Now I can stir it. Just be careful, the steam is really, really hot, and it can burn you, so be careful. If for some reason your caramel has seized up and your cream is kind of just floating on top and you have these big bits of hard caramel in there, just turn your heat onto the lowest it goes and stir it continuously while you melt the caramel into the cream. Don't worry if that does happen, it just normally means that your caramel cooled down a touch and your cream is cold, so it seizes it. You're going to add in your butter and stir it round. Mix it until the butter is completely melted in, and then I'm going to go over to my stick blender and blend it to fully emulsify the butter in, because there's a lot of butter in there. If you don't have a stick blender, you can use a normal blender or a NutriBullet. Just make sure it cools down enough that your NutriBullet doesn't like explode on you because you're not meant to use them on hot things. Yeah. Alright, I'm going to go blend this and then I will show you what it looks like when it's done. So this is the caramel after I've blended it. It's nice and smooth and thick. All the butter is emulsified in, there's no streaky fatty bits. So I'm going to pour this into a container and put it in the fridge to set. Alright, we are up to the step of making our hazelnut praline, which you have already made for you, but I'm going to show you how to make it so you know how to make it in the future. I'm making quite a big batch because I have a lot of hazelnuts. So I have some sugar and water in here. I'm just going to give it a little stir. And then I'm going to put it on a high heat and let it cook until we have a nice light caramel. I have ready a baking tray. Oops. Baking tray with a piece of baking paper. I'm just using one with size because I have a lot of caramel here and I don't want it to run out of the tray. And then I have some roasted hazelnuts that I've removed the skins from, or most of them. Sometimes you'll find there's skins that don't want to come off, which is fine. So we're going to roast. I've roasted the hazelnuts at 180 degrees for 12 minutes. That's what I pretty much always stick them in for. And they come out quite dark. You take them out, let them cool down, and then you just rub them like that between your hands and the skins will come off. So like that one, if I do that, the skin comes off and you just throw away the skins. So what we're going to do is make our caramel, leave it to set, and then I'm going to put these and the caramel in a blender and blend it on a low speed for a really long time until it turns into a paste. It takes a while because we're getting the fat from the nuts to release to make that kind of paste. It's the same way as kind of how they make peanut butter, if you've ever tried making peanut butter at home. Because we're doing this in a home blender instead of like a fancy refiner, it's going to be a bit chunky, but I really like it like that. And the sugar, the caramel, gives it a really nice bits of crunch and just a nice flavor. If you don't want to make yours at home, if you make this recipe again, you can use any kind of nut butter. So you could use peanut butter, you could use the Fix and Fog, the chocolate hazelnut butter is really nice. If you can get pure hazelnut butter, which I think is quite hard, you can use that, like hard to get. But yeah, so we're just going to leave this until we have a light golden, because we're tipping it out and we're not adding anything into it, so we're not putting any water or any butter or anything like that in there to stop it cooking. We want it to be a really light color, otherwise it will burn when we pour it on. It will continue to cook because caramel is so hot. So yeah, just waiting for this to get darker. It's a lot of sugar in there. I have 300 grams of sugar and 300 grams of hazelnuts. I always do equal quantities. And when it's just about ready, I will bring you back in. Our caramel is almost there. I literally turned the camera off for like not even 30 seconds. But again, I think I've talked about this in other videos. You want to check the caramel on your spatula rather than in the pot. Because if you see in the pot, it looks like it's the perfect color. But on your spatula, you can see that it's still very light. And we do want it light, but not that light, because we still want that nice caramel flavor. So you want it to be just a tiny bit darker. Now that it's colored, you can stir it. It's past the point of being able to crystallize, really. So that's that nice light caramel color that we're after. Just light yellow. So I'm going to turn that off. Get that out of the way. Bring my pan in. And pour that over. Be careful, it's very hot. Oops. Oh gosh, sorry, I've dropped my spatula 3 times. Yeah, it's very hot. Do not burn yourself. Make sure that if you don't have a heat resistant table that you keep this on a chopping board. I just like to spread it around a bit to help it, and you can see like on the edges it's a bit darker. So I'm going to leave this until it's completely cooled down. It'll be firm to the touch, and I'll break it up and then I'll put it in the blender with these. So I'll show you what that looks like just before I blend it. Alright, so my caramel is set. I'm going to put my hazelnuts into the blender. Break up my caramel just by smashing it like that. That one's not working, but that's fine. There we go. I should have greased my tin for the bits that got stuck, but that's fine. It will be okay. Alright, and now I'm going to go blend this, and I will show you what it looks like when it's done. So this is after about 10 minutes of blending. I added, I'd say maybe 4 tablespoons of canola oil just to help it along. It's because my blender is not very good. And it will be nice and thick like that. The longer you blend it, the runnier it will become, but that's as much as we need for this. Now that we've made our praline paste, we can make our feuilletine. So feuilletine is normally a very thin crepe that's been cooked till it's crispy and then crushed up, and it's very common for pastry chefs to use in Europe, but it's quite hard to get here. It's very expensive when you can get it. You can make it yourself, but it's a lot of effort. So we are using cornflakes, which work just as well. And here we have our chocolate, our cocoa butter, and our praline paste. I'm just melting that over a pot of simmering water. The cocoa butter kind of coats the cornflakes and stops them from going soft and mushy. It keeps it crispy. But if you don't have it, you can leave it out and just put a little bit more chocolate in there. Everything is all melted now. It won't be super smooth because you have those kind of crunchy bits of hazelnuts in there. Just got a bit of caramel melted in there. Awesome. So, I'm going to add in my cornflakes. What I'm going to do is take them and crush them in. Just with your hand is fine. You can crush it in the bowl first if you like. Give it a nice mix together till everything's all coated. And then I'm just going to leave this in a container to set at room temperature till it's ready. Yeah, it won't take long to set. You can chuck it in the fridge if you need, but it should be set by the time your cookies are done. Okay, my oven is preheating and my cookie dough is nice and firm, so you can now roll it into balls. How big you make them will change how big your cookies are. These are probably about 30 to 40 grams looking at them. You can weigh them all if you want to be exact. Any leftover cookie dough you can also freeze. Freezes very well pre-portioned or in a log. And then I'm going to bake them depending on the size. For this size, I will bake them for 10 minutes, turning halfway through. Make sure to give them plenty of space as they will grow. I'll give them more space than what they currently have. And yeah, I will show you what they look like when they are fully baked. So my cookies were in the oven for 12 minutes in total till they got this nice golden brown. I could have let mine cool down or chill down a bit longer so they would have held their shape better. Also, my oven is not very good, so the temperature was a bit low, so they spread a bit more. Got my nice caramel in my piping bag, and I'm just going to pipe, depending how big your cookies are, I'm going to do 4 dots, maybe 5 on these ones. I've let my cookies cool down as well, otherwise the caramel will melt. Perfect. And then my fondant, just gonna go around the edges like that, kind of fill in the gaps. You want to leave a try leave a bit of a hole in the center, but not a huge deal if you don't. Everything for these cookies lasts really well, so they're best eaten in the 3 days after assembly, but the caramel lasts a month in the fridge. The fondant will last a month at least at room temperature in an airtight container. The praline paste will last as well a good 2 months at room temperature, really, in an airtight container. And the cookie dough will last really well in the fridge. Then I'm going to fill the centers with my praline paste. Nice, good kind of spoonful of that. And then finish it off with a touch of flaky salt. And voila! Enjoy your delicious loaded cookies. Bye!